Welcome to Better Know a Blogger. Today we have James Kendrick, one of my very favorite ZDNet bloggers, to talk about all things mobile and otherwise. Well, hello, James, and welcome back.
Hi, David. How are you
I'm doing
today?
great. I'm doing great. For those of you who are watching this, there's a bit of an inside joke that James and I have. We actually did this entire program a couple of days ago, and one of the views that you see in the program, we didn't have sound for, so we're doing it all again.
And we promise this one will be better.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we were talking a few minutes ago about Netflix and Star Trek. You mentioned that you were watching the whole TNG from the beginning to the end on Netflix.
Yeah, it's great to watch it from season one to the last season straight through like that, back to back.
Yeah, I started doing that too. I started with the Next Generation, and at the time my wife was like, "Go ahead, watch it. I don't care." And she started to get sucked in somewhere around the
Mhm.
third season of the Next Generation. So we watched the entire Deep Space Nine from the beginning to end as well, which was also extremely cool. And she started off, "Oh, I don't like Quark, and I don't like Odo," and by the end, she's like, "Oh, Quark, yeah." And we are now watching Voyager. We're I think in season 4 or 5 of Voyager, going almost every night. We've been watching an episode, and the reason I wanted to bring that up is I don't know if you know the story about the selection of Kate Mulgrew for Voyager or not.
I know I don't.
Now, it turns out that Kate Mulgrew, who played Captain Janeway, was not the first captain for Voyager. They did this huge, it was bizarre. They did this huge search for who the captain would be for Voyager, and they wanted a female captain, and they interviewed all of these actresses for the role, and they weren't really happy with any of them. And then out of the blue, they decided that they were going to pick this French film actress named Genevieve Bujold as the captain of the Enterprise. So she comes in, she gets the gig, and Berman, who is the executive producer, tells her about all the challenges of TV production versus film production. She's like, yeah, I can do this, although she did it in a French accent. And says, yeah, I can do this. So they get on stage, and she doesn't come onto the bridge like a captain. She takes it very, very subtly. She's very small in the role. She refuses to eat with the other cast members. She's off in her own little corner, and she makes it two takes, two scenes before she sits down and says, "This is not for me." So they're already into producing the second episode by the time that this thing happens in the first one. So they have to reshoot the whole episode with a new captain. So that's when they bring Kate Mulgrew into the show, and they have to reshoot the whole thing with Kate Mulgrew. But it gets worse because they did this enormous shoot in the LA Convention Center, and they rented the LA Convention Center. But I don't know if you've seen Voyager. For the first couple seasons, Kate Mulgrew has this bun on the top of her head.
Right.
She didn't initially, but they could see background through her hair in the first take of the LA Convention Center. So they had to redo Caretaker once, which was the pilot series. Then they had to redo it again with Kate Mulgrew. And then they had to re-rent the LA Convention Center and redo an entire series of shoots because of the hair problem. So in that context, I think you and I are doing okay.
Yeah, the tribulations of a starship captain. Wow.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for you and I, neither one of us command starships. Why don't we start with today's news, which is GDGT got bought by AOL, huh? That's something
Yeah,
that you've been
that's
paying
a big
attention to.
deal. I mean, we like to think that blogging is lucrative, but we know the reality is often and most often quite the opposite. So it's always nice to see a couple of really good guys like Peter Rojas and Ryan Block make good. And
So
for a lot of money, apparently.
so isn't it sort of like they're going home? I mean, didn't they start Engadget, and that's also part of AOL?
Well, actually, Peter Rojas, going even further back, he started Gizmodo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then apparently had a falling out with the Gizmodo folks and started Engadget. So Peter Rojas is probably, by that track record, one of the greatest tech bloggers that ever lived.
Wow.
I mean, all the big ones. I mean, he started every one of them and moved on.
So do we think that Engadget and Gadget are going to combine?
Well, they've already been. They've already been. Engadget has already been using the Gadget's database technology. There's been a business deal for over a year for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and for as I understand it, that use of the technology is what kick-started the conversations between AOL and Gadget in general. Like, well, wow, there's a lot of ways we can make this. We would like to bring this to the entire blog properties, not just Engadget, but all the other big blogs that we have here at AOL.
Neat.
So it's actually going to be a huge synergy between the two groups, I believe.
Wow, that's going to be kind of interesting. So let's go back to you. Let's start with the basics, and I'm gonna see if we can get this to show up right. There we go. Tell us about yourself, your background, how you got here, what you're doing, all that good stuff.
Well, I started out for many, many years as a geophysicist, which is my actual trade in life until the last decade, let's say. I actually specialized in my geophysical career of producing 3D seismic images. You know, those cubed depictions of the subsurface that oil companies use to determine where to drill, how to drill, and even more importantly, when not to drill, because drilling oil wells is so incredibly expensive. And so I did that for a long time, and I've always had a fascination with mobile technology because I believed it was going to revolutionize society eventually. And I started blogging about that in my spare time on the side for fun. And that took off. That was the original JK on the Run blog, if anybody remembers JK on the Run. Like I said, I started on the side doing it for fun, and it was back before there was even really many blogs. I mean, it was really early days in the early 2000s, and it took off. And after a few years of growing popularity, I was approached by Malik at GigaOM of GigaOM.com fame, who said, "We want to buy your blog, and we want to hire you to come along full-time to continue writing it." So I was able to take that opportunity to make a complete career change. And I'm now a professional technology writer and have been since 2008. And it's very... Wow, something happened.
You okay? You still there?
Sorry, Skype went crazy on me.
Oh, it happens.
But anyway, and so now I'm a professional blogger and couldn't be happier because I absolutely love writing about technology. It's my passion.
Cool. So, and you've been at ZDNet. You and I were comparing notes. We've both been there just about 3 years.
Yeah, I was at GigaOM for 2.5, going on 3 years, and it just became time to move on. And ZDNet was talking to me, saying, "Come over here, come over here, come over here." And so I made the move, and I am so glad I did. I absolutely love all our colleagues working with guys
Absolutely.
like you, and our colleagues at ZDNet are just incredible. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
every day when I look around at ZDNet and see the people that I get to call colleagues, I get goosebumps.
Yeah, I do
It's
too.
really good.
I really do. I read some of the things that everybody produces from all across the world. I don't know if our readers really understand that ZDNet is a worldwide thing, and I get to read a wide variety of perspectives. And one of the reasons we're doing Better Know a Blogger here is to give the audience out there the opportunity to really get to know the people behind the words, because you guys are all fascinating. I mean, we talked briefly last time about geophysics and fracking and stuff like that, which is your background. We've got a marine architect as one of our bloggers. We have a medical anthropologist. We have a registered nurse. We have, and then of course we have me. We have a whole pile of people with all sorts of interesting backgrounds. Um, I'm not going to subject you to the question I asked you last time about fracking, although I am going to ask you, there's a congressman who today in the newspaper claims he's been drinking the fracking water. Now, does that explain what's going on in Congress, or is he himself just nuts?
I'm not sure that anything could adequately explain what's going on in Congress. He's nuts
He's
if he's
not.
doing that. I mean, obviously, he's trying to make a point to prove that it's safe. And I do believe it's supposed to be safe, but would I drink it? No.
No, neither would I. So, do you work mostly from home or from an office?
I have a home office. Truth be told, most days I end up going out and working wherever, a coffee shop. I work in museums, I work in libraries, I work in all sorts of different venues. I live in a central downtown area, so I'm pretty close by to all sorts of stuff, and I like to have a change of scenery. So I work wherever, and that's really the beauty of both what we do and mobile technology, which lets me do that. I can work from wherever and no one would know it. I mean, I could just as easily be doing this interview with you at any of those places. And probably you'd not know it except if I did it at the zoo and there were giraffes and stuff running around behind me.
Okay, now we got to know. We definitely have to do it at the zoo because that'd be cool.
The zoo is a great place. I mean, in fact, a lot of people don't realize most large cities, I'm in Houston, but most large cities that have good museums have programs where they let people come in and work.
Mm.
And what a fantastic venue, because you can take a break and go look at stuff, either in the Museum of Natural History and Science or Fine Arts Museum.
Yeah,
Wow,
absolutely.
what more stimulating place can you work, right?
Yeah, yeah. My dad has always been interested in tropical fish. That hasn't been his career. It's just been an interest of his. So, as a kid, I grew up getting to see the behind the scenes of these ginormous aquariums, because he would just
Yeah.
go up to an aquarium, as a tourist, and talk his way into getting the aquarium director to give him a behind the scenes tour of these things. Just
And that's easier to do than you might think, because
yeah.
people love talking about what they're passionate
Hmm.
about.
Yeah. And so I got to see all of these interesting aquariums and the machinery and the gadgets that went on with it. And, I sometimes think that part of my interest in technology came from seeing how, these facilities worked, and that they were such complex but interesting things. So what's your typical workday like? Do you have a pattern every day, or does it vary? How do you stay sane in managing your own time?
Well, I try to maintain at least a semi static work routine. And that's simply because if you don't, you can easily find yourself either working all the time or not working enough, quite frankly. And so I typically start at a early in the morning, as I would with any job, and get down to it and work at it. And um, take adequate breaks, just like if I was in an office, which I was for so many years, and basically try to make work time work and personal time personal. And I find that to be very important because you can easily screw up and find yourself doing far too much all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you one of these guys who does a whole pile of articles every day, or are you one of these folks like me who does one or two or four articles a week?
Well, I do research and germinate ideas for articles and take notes for a whole bunch of them all the time. I mean, I have always have a bunch of different topic ideas germinating and notes and uh, gathering sources and stuff like that until the mood strikes me for that particular to write an article about that particular topic, and then I'll just do it. And I have, and it's the mobile technology that I use that lets me do that because all of my research databases and notes and everything is all cloud based now. So it doesn't matter whether it's my smartphone or a tablet or a laptop, I can instantly get to all my notes. And that has absolutely liberated my work.
So you're a Google Cloud user mostly, right?
Google mostly, also big Evernote,
Mm-hmm.
which is their own cloud for my note taking. And um, between those two cloud services, I'm, I'm absolutely productive no matter where I am, what I've got with me, what I'm doing. I really edited articles on my smartphone
You are
because
breaking up.
that's what I had on me. And
Oh, there you go. You're back. Okay.
I'm back.
Yeah, all of a sudden you were breaking up and then you were back. So that's cool.
Oh, okay.
The
Probably
challenges of internet bandwidth.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's that cloud stuff. It's so nebulous. We
Yeah.
don't really understand it.
So, tell me about the Chromebook because I know that that's something that you and I are both beginning to think is something of a threat to Microsoft's sort of ownership of the PC world and even the small office desktops.
Well, for me personally, I mean, my work is all online, all day. I'm never offline. And even when I'm on the desktop, I use the Chrome browser because it does all the things that I want it to do. And so the Chromebooks and the Chrome OS that they're running is basically an extended version of Chrome. So I'm literally the perfect target for a Chromebook. And so I picked one up late last year, mainly out of curiosity and because they're cheap enough, and was instantly taken with how absolutely perfect it is to do everything I need to do. So it's pretty groundbreaking for me personally to have discovered that my solid work machine could be a $250 Chromebook.
That's kind of astonishing. So you've told me that pretty much your full time income now is coming off of blogging. How much time do you spend each day on blogging, and do you do it? Are you a 5 day a weeker or a 7 day a weeker?
Uh, I work probably a portion of all 7 days simply because, like I said, I'm always thinking about things and researching different things. And uh, I try to keep a full work schedule during the week, just as if I was going off to a job somewhere. And then I may jump on from time to time in evenings and sometime on the weekends, but without a schedule. It's just if it strikes me and it fits with what I'm doing or not doing at the time, then I'll do it. But otherwise, I try to segregate the two. But it's a full-time job for me, easily.
So what's your workspace like? I mean, obviously you've mentioned that you're very portable and your workspace can be in front of giraffes sometimes. But at home, do you spend like are you out most of the time, or do you work from home
I
a
work
percentage of it, or?
from home most of the time.
Hmm.
I try to get outside and work in other venues at least a couple hours a day, weather permitting. Right now, I'm in my home office, which is just a regular small desk, and it's incredible when I look around this desk now. The amount of gadgetry that I have here. I got within reach 4 tablets, a Chromebook, a MacBook, 2 smartphones, a MiFi, and probably 5 different tablet keyboards, all literally all within reach. But that's what lets me work anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, when you're working outside of your home, are you connecting through 3G or 4G, and do you have decent reception? Because down here in Central Florida, our reception for any of that is horrible.
Uh, well, I mean, obviously, I try to find venues with Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
Um, one of my favorite venues for working doesn't have Wi-Fi, and fortunately, the 4G, both Sprint and Verizon LTE in Houston is fantastic. It's pretty much,
That's awesome.
especially Verizon. I mean, it's blanketed. It's such a big city that Houston is. Verizon has it blanketed with 4G, and so I don't ever think about it. I have a share everything plan with Verizon, which lets I pay for a big bucket of data, 4G data every month, and I can use it on any of my Verizon devices, which is a couple of iPads and a smartphone. So I don't ever think about it, quite frankly, anymore when I'm working here in Houston.
So you're a pretty active user mobily. How much data do you use each month? How much are you buying from Verizon, if you don't mind my asking?
I I have from the beginning of the share everything plan, I have ponied up for the maximum 10 gigs a month. What do I actually use as heavily as I use it? Maybe 4 or 5.
Really?
Yeah.
So if somebody were to sign up for a typical 4G plan, assuming that they're not, streaming all of Voyager, probably they can live within a four gig plan.
Probably so easily. And I should point out, I don't stream video. I mean, I could go through that in a week if I
Yeah.
did that. Um, but for heavy normal use, yeah, 4 gigs for the average person is probably even overkill, quite frankly.
Cool. So, given that we've talked about you're being a heavy Google user, and we talked about the Chromebook. I would assume then that you're mostly using Chrome as a browser.
Yeah, I use the Chrome browser on almost everything, even the iPad on Android. I mean, it's Google has developed the Chrome browser on the mobile platforms to be really, really good, and it allows me to stay. I have instant access to all my bookmarks, my settings. I mean, Google does cloud-based synchronization really well, and it works for me nicely.
What's always kind of freaked me out about Google is the issue of being able to manage my account. Like one day, all of a sudden, I gave them a backup email address, and they decided to reroute all my email to that backup email address, and there was like nobody to call. Do you feel
Uh,
that relying on Google with essentially not much tech support is an issue?
well, I would say if I really think about it, yeah, that bothers me. But the reality of it is, I've been heavily using Google since the early Gmail days, which is going back, what, 5, 6 years now? And I have never, ever had an issue. And that's with as heavy usage as probably any one individual could have. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm not that concerned because they're working for me.
That makes sense. That makes definite sense. So, how much time do you put into this whole social networking thing, and where do you optimize your time? Do you think it's?
I'm
Let me
on
ask you one more
Twitter
question
all
before you
day.
answer that. Do you think as a blogger, social networking is important?
Yes, I, I really do because social networking has become a pretty viable two-way conversation, vehicle. Um, I started on Twitter back when it first started, but I never really did much with it at all because it seemed silly. If you remember in the early days, Twitter was, oh, look, I'm having eggs for breakfast. And I
Yeah,
never, I never really participated much with that,
my
but that
wife
has
made this
changed.
incredible meal last night with like a roast and gorgonzola potatoes, and I actually wanted to tweet that out. It's one of the first times I wanted to tweet a meal just to be able to brag that my wife made this amazing meal, and then I realized, oh my god, I've become one of them. I didn't, but I thought, like,
Something
look
like
at me,
that,
I'm eating food.
I would tweet a picture of it.
Yeah,
I don't do that very often. That's the whole point.
yeah.
But for special things, what I found as the number of people I interact with on Twitter has grown substantially, I'm constantly amazed with how many people are genuinely interested in stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on Twitter all day. It's running in the background on every single device I use, and um, I jump on it when I need a break from real work. I'll jump over to Twitter and check up with the timeline updates because I there's actually a lot of genuine news sources now on Twitter, and increasingly so on Google Plus, which I'm getting a little more involved with Google Plus too. But Twitter is my main
Yeah, that was
social
going to be my
network.
next question is how are you using Google Plus? But I want to ask you one before that, which is are you using Twitter as a marketing tool as well? Is it driving traffic and driving
Yes.
readership and driving notoriety for you?
Yeah, as my, what would you call that, followship,
Mm-hmm. Good enough.
following has grown.
Stalkers. I think of them as
It's
stalkers.
yeah, it's become a viable marketing tool too. I mean, I promote everything I write on both Twitter and Google Plus. Sure.
Have you used a tool called Buffer to sort of schedule your tweets out?
I looked into scheduling tweets, not particularly with that, but with other stuff early on. And I have to say, I ended up not really seeing much benefit to doing that. Again, I think you can overthink something like Twitter too
Mm-hmm.
much. I mean, I promote it when I first publish something, and because that's when it's gone live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I will typically tweet an article's existence again once, typically much, much later or long after the original one. And that's simply because not everyone is paying attention all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I do my morning reading at about 7 in the morning, and so I wound up for a while sending out, 8 or 10, Twitter updates on interesting articles at 7 in the morning when nobody cared. So I started using this buffer thing. I don't use their paid for version, which I think is a little bit more expensive than its value. Although if it was a little less expensive, I think I might use it. At $10 a month, it's almost the price of Netflix. So I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. But what I found was really interesting. I actually discovered this yesterday, or the day before, was they have a little tracking thing that tells you how many people have clicked on the individual things in your tweets, which I never looked at before. And what I
That's
found
cool.
fascinating was, I had a lot of tweets where 1, 2, 5, 10 people would click on a tweet. And then I'd have tweets where 4,000 people would click on a tweet. And I've never seen that kind of click through. I mean, as somebody who's, like you ran JK on the Run and I ran Palm Power, as somebody who made a living off of advertising click through, I mean, that ratio of click throughs, while it doesn't happen all the time, and I couldn't find any pattern, was just astonishing that people, you send out one click and 4,000 people click through. It's just crazy.
Well, I think that's the sheer power of social networking.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen similar types of effects, and it often depends on who is referring to your tweet, or whatever. I once had, and I admit I shamelessly goaded him to do this. I got Brent Spiner to retweet something for me. And it was massive. I mean, his audience is staggering.
Well,
And
now
thousands
I'm
of
just
people
honored
saw.
to know you. I'm going to reach out and try to touch you because you tweeted with Brent Spiner. So
Yeah.
wow.
I actually have several times, but that was the one time because he actively on Twitter says he doesn't retweet people.
Well,
But I actually got him to do it. In
I
fact,
just had a geek flush.
it
I'm
was
like,
kind of a challenge.
I'm like, whoa.
But yeah, and for anybody out there, that's data.
Yeah.
We were just talking about TNG, Star Trek.
Yeah.
He will always be dated to me.
Yeah. Yeah, he was also, it was really funny because he was on Warehouse 13, as was Kate Mulgrew, which is a sci-fi channel show that's not nearly as good as Star Trek, but is fun. And it was kind of interesting because those two were on it. And I think there was somebody else out of the Star Trek universe that was also on Warehouse 13. And it was kind of fun to see them all, of course, much older, but still there. And but I'm just honored to be in your presence.
Spiner was also in the movie Independence Day.
Yes, he was, wasn't he?
He played the crazy scientist guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and at the time, Bill Pullman played president, but I think Bill Pullman is in a new movie now, 15 or 20 years later, where he actually looks a little more presidential and not as much like a teenager trying to play president, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That was a fun movie, although the idea of, what was it, a MacBook trying to hack an alien computer just didn't seem completely real.
It just works.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to real work here.
Oh, no.
I know. Google Plus and Facebook, how do they fit into your world?
Well, I'm using Google Plus more and more these days. Again, for me, it's primarily a work promotion tool, but I'm discovering with better tools to interact with Google Plus. Like, for example, the current Android version of the Google Plus app is outstanding, and it makes actually working with Google Plus really productive. And so I'm finding that with tools like that, I'm doing that more often too, and it's becoming more of a source. I mean, as someone who likes or who writes about technology, I'm always on the lookout for interesting sources of information, and so I'm discovering that Google Plus is rapidly becoming one of those sources.
Were you a big Google Reader user for a while?
I still am.
Are you?
I'm on Google Reader all day.
Because I read a couple days ago that it started to break down. Is it holding up for you?
No, it did have a problem, but it was only for part of a day, and then they fixed it.
So even though it's not really supported vestigially, it's still around?
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Wow.
Actually.
So what about Facebook?
Facebook I use for promotion as far as work goes, but all I really do with that is use it for following family and close friends. I was very judicious in the beginning of Facebook of only adding people I actually knew. And so that has turned out to be a very good thing, because I primarily now use it to follow my kids, my family, other family members, and very, very close friends.
Cool. So, and along that topic, how many kids do you have? Married, partner, kids, dogs, that kind of stuff.
I'm currently single, but I have been married in the past. I have two daughters grown. Um, they now have six children of their own. And
Grandpa.
yeah, they keep churning them out, but it's it's by plan, so good for them. It's what they want. Uh, and friends scattered all over the world. And that's one giant benefit to doing what we do. It amazes me on a given day, I may correspond or even talk over Skype with friends in the UK, friends in Asia. I mean, it's amazing to me what technology has done to make it easier for us to actually interact with people anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm running this from a studio that's really a 9 by 9 foot room that in this house was probably meant to be a baby's room. And yet we're doing this broadband studio level. I mean, a little more amateurish because I'm, not a broadcaster as much as I am a techie, but a studio level communication just over, my normal broadband and yours. So as a full time blogger, how do you manage all of the contacts and all of the people and all of the press you have to keep track of? Do you use like a CRM system, or do you just dump them all in your email messages and search them? How do you organize the people you have to call and keep track of?
I'm very good with Gmail, of using labels and keeping everything organized. My inbox typically at the end of the day is empty. Um, and that's as much because of how I organize receive mail as much as keeping on top of it. And that's pretty much all I do. I mean, if there's anything that I need to follow up or something, I will instantly send it to Evernote again. And uh, that's a very good tool because Evernote is also accessible on every single platform I use. So if I need to follow up with something, I'll shoot it to Evernote where I will be constantly reminded to follow up on it. And that works very well for me.
So that answers my question about what you use for organizational techniques. It's Evernote as a tool for keeping track of that. So if we're listening, I mean, you and I are incredibly fortunate that we're able to make all or part of our living as bloggers, where there's a lot of people who yearn for that but don't have the luxury or gift or the years of experience that got us the audiences that we now have. But do you have any really good tips for people who want to become more successful as professional bloggers, from not only the how do they get there and get the gig, but also how do you manage your day or manage your time or manage the quality of your output?
Well, I think number one, I believe you have to be passionate about what you're going to blog about for sure. I mean, that is the single thing that comes through on anyone's writing on a regular basis or a continued basis, maybe is a better way to put it. Um, and then I think no matter how I guess how informal your blogging technique or your blog or your subject matter is, I would strongly recommend that the longer you do it, the more effort you put into trying to write well. I mean, people do actually have a knee-jerk reaction to those who don't try to, to follow pretty good principles for writing. And over time, it turns people off, I believe. So you just have to kind of, like anything else you might do in life, try to always be getting better at it.
That makes total sense. I tell my Berkeley students who are programming students, and I tell them that they have to look at their writing quality as well. And it's kind of interesting because I teach object oriented C programming, and so that's a case sensitive language, and yet the students will often write essays and things that I mean they're posts and their things for school where they pay no attention to case, and I'm like, if you're going to be programming, you need to pay attention to case. So you really ought to get into the practice of this, not to mention a professional career involves not being sloppy. And I think, from a blogging point of view, certainly from us, I read your stuff and I'd like to work with you later. The stuff that people want to read, you want that to be good. You want it to be professional. So I am 125 to 176% behind what you just said.
And to make it worse for a lot of bloggers who don't really think this is true, everything that's put on the internet is there forever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it really, really is. So, I mean, it just makes sense. Get as good, keep getting better at it.
You know what's scary is that some of the stuff that wasn't on the internet is also on the internet. I found posts that I posted to Usenet back in 1981, and thankfully it was about technology. Thankfully it was, okay, how do I make this C program do this? So I was just being a geek back then too. But I have posts before there was even an internet that are now available on the internet.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, those of us old enough to have been there, yeah, we all do, whether we know it or realize it or not. And I also early on have been writing about mobile technology for print publications too. And even some of that stuff that actually was printed prior to having a big online presence, these publications, a lot of them ended up putting that stuff on so that they had a historical archive. So it never surprises me when I see stuff that's now available on the internet, even though it wasn't, like you said.
Yeah, speaking of old stuff, my first official mobile device was the Sharp Wizard, although I carried an old S100 computer on an airplane a couple times when I went back and forth in college. What was your first mobile device, and what are some of the sort of milestone mobile devices you've had since then?
I would say that my very first mobile device was a TI-35 calculator, actually. Fully programmable. I had the card reader, the printer.
Yeah, I had the 59C with the card reader and printer. It was really cool.
Yeah, and I actually had that and used that in my early geophysical career. I mean, this was real stuff, but it was totally programmable, so it was a real computer as far as I was concerned. And then I graduated to Sharp Wizard, like you said, Casio stuff, Sharp. Gosh, I couldn't even begin to name them all. I had them all. I had a Newton, which I actually really liked the Newton.
Yeah, I did too.
Gosh, goes back way too far.
I wrote a lot of Palm Power articles in the beginning on the Newton message pad, 2000, I think it was. So it was a little interesting because I was writing for Palm, but I was using the Newton because it had a bigger screen at the time. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I actually, going back to Palm, Palm was very big part of my early gadgetry too. I'll never forget the Palm XV PDA that I had with the I bought the OmniSky modem that snapped onto the back of it, and I was probably one of the first people in Houston who could get email mobily.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. That's wild, huh?
That actually made a big difference in my career because it turned out that was a big advantage. And so
I would think so. So
good old Palm, but they're gone.
Yeah, that's too bad. So let's round this out a little bit. Where do you stand? Religion, politics? What do you do for fun, hobbies, that kind of stuff?
Well, one of my hard, fast rules is I never talk about religion or politics. So that's totally off the table. Hobbies, I mean, I like doing a lot of stuff. I like different sports. I like movies. I mean, I like going out and just doing different things. And that's one of the reasons why I was happy last year to move downtown here, because I'm right in the middle of it. I mean, I've got the Minute Maid Park 2 blocks from where I'm sitting right now. So
That's
I'm
very,
always doing something.
that's very cool. Yeah, there are days that I wish I had followed your advice and not talked about politics, but that's kind of how I make a part of my living. So,
Oh man, I
yeah,
couldn't do it. I really couldn't. I mean, I'm already constantly getting trash for writing about particular platforms or gadgets or whatever. I mean, it's pretty funny how passionate people are about their mobile
yeah,
devices. I
yeah.
guess that's a good way to put it.
There was a high point in my. I had a high point day where I had one article in ZDNet government where half the people said I was a horrible Republican and half the people said I was a horrible Democrat. And then I had another article in DIY IT where half the people said, oh, I was a Microsoft lover, and half the people said I was an Apple lover. And, I'm sitting there going, I can't win no matter where I am in this stuff. But it's
Well,
fun.
I feel that I'm doing it right because I have regularly been called a fanboy for Apple, Microsoft, Nokia, RIM. I mean, I could go on and on. Android, Chromebook, even. I've been called a fanboy for Chromebooks. I mean, that to me tells me I'm doing it right because I'm genuinely passionate about all of it. So I cover all of it, and there are people that paint everybody with a fanboy brush. I mean, either no matter what article I write, if it's positive about a gadget or a company or a platform, even if it mentions nothing at all about any other competing entities, I will instantly get bombarded with why do I hate everything else? And it that that
Oops.
that really is I think that is an evolution of the internet. I mean, it's people believe that you can't like something without hating everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
It's very weird to me.
So I am attempting to get us back to the main screen here, so bear with me for 1 second. Switching to you, switching there. Let's see if we're back. Okay, everybody but me. There we go.
There you are, yay!
And let's see. There we are. Okay. So I think that, we're coming into the home stretch here. Is there, the discussion about the polarization of the internet is always very, very interesting to me in terms of just how people feel about this stuff. But, the ZDNet audience is really interesting because we have so many interesting people with such a wide variety of both positions and skill sets that they bring to bear. Is there a sort of end message you want to tell all of your audience out there face to face that you might not be able to tell them, text to text?
Well, I try to be clear in my coverage of all of this stuff that I genuinely don't care what anyone uses. I mean, I never ever cover a technology with the purpose to try to get as many people as I can using that technology or avoiding that technology. I write about what I find interesting, and I know that my longtime readers make it clear to me that they appreciate that because they they get a feel for what I find interesting and how that might intersect with what they might like or find interesting. That is genuinely all that drives me. I really don't care about any particular company or any particular platform or any particular device. I really don't care. I'm fascinated by technology, and I get genuinely excited when I find something that really works well for me, and I share that. And then I move on to the next thing. Yeah.
You know, that really comes across in your stuff too. I mean, one of the things that I want to let people know is that James is one of my very, very favorite bloggers. And whenever I get a new gadget, I go looking for stuff that James has written on, or I send him an email going, "Hey, James, what should I run for this?" Or I have a question about that. And you have become such an enormous resource just to my own work and my own fun, not to mention everybody out there on ZDNet and those who pop in and you know take a taste of our stuff as well. So I just want to thank you very much. I also want to thank you for your time taking this and doing this a second time. I've been watching the mixer bar on the control panel here, and it's actually been bouncing up and down. So I think we actually have sound. So cross your fingers, and hopefully we'll actually have a full take here.
Otherwise, we should have been doing this the whole
Yeah,
time.
exactly, exactly. But I just want to thank you very much. If you hang out for a second while I roll the credits, we'll catch up afterwards. And everybody who's listened, I suggest you take a look at Mobile News. James is awesome, and his writing is incredibly, incredibly helpful if you're using a mobile device. So thank you, James.
Oh, you're too kind, and I really appreciate you having me here. I love just talking about this stuff. I mean, it's my passion. Yes,
And it shows. It shows.
so it was fun. It was fun. We have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you want. It's an open invitation.
Awesome.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was James Kendrick, one of my favorite ZDNet bloggers in Better Know a Blogger. I think after the 50 or so minutes we've been talking, you've had a chance to better get to know James, and he's certainly a person worth getting to know. So thank you very much, and until our next Better Know a Blogger, have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.